Guys, for the first time in months and months and months, it finally happened. A car company has reduced pricing on a very expensive model. This one specifically being Lucid, which I guess makes sense because Lucid, of all EV startups and pretty much all EV companies, has had the biggest issue with demand. That's been no secret. They ramped up production of the Lucid Air Grand Touring, which is basically their highest trim that they're still taking orders for because they had the Dream Edition, but that was limited time only. Although I guess you have to also discount the Lucid Air Sapphire, but that's $250,000. We should just not even acknowledge that one. But I'm guessing the sales for the Sapphire were pretty low considering that they couldn't get anybody to buy the Grand Touring, or at least nowhere near enough. There were lots available on existing inventory on Lucid's website. They were boasting about low interest financing options for this vehicle. They were offering huge discounts to Lucid employees who wanted to buy the Grand Touring, but that wasn't enough. So now, just officially across the board, the starting price of the Grand Touring is $16,000 less now for the low, very affordable price of $138,000. Now, they did take out a few features that used to be standard for the Grand Touring in order to achieve this price point, but I guess you'll have to decide for yourself if you think it's worth it, because essentially in order to get the Grand Touring, which is the longest range EV that you can actually buy on the market right now at over 500 miles of range, that no longer is coming with Dream Drive Pro, which the biggest difference between standard Dream Drive, which is what the base model ships with, and Dream Drive Pro, in my opinion, is essentially highway assist, which, in case you weren't aware, that's basically autopilot functionality. So if you like your car to stay centered in between the lines on the freeway, that's going to be a $10,000 add-on on top of your $138,000 car. And this, in my opinion, does not look great for the future of the company, because a lot of their valuation is based on them ramping up to many thousands of vehicles delivered a year, and all of those vehicles having thick profit margins, because from the beginning, Lucid has always been boasting about how they're competing with the Mercedes S-Class, and they're trying to sell higher priced vehicles with more luxury features. But a lot of people out there have already said Lucid's interior and build quality is not quite as good as the Mercedes S-Class, and they're in this really awkward position, in my opinion, because I do see value in the company. Like, I do think they've come up with an incredibly efficient powertrain, and their higher voltage architecture allows for insanely good peak charge speeds. You know, it's one thing for the Hummer EV to get over 350 kilowatts because that's like a 200 kilowatt hour battery pack. So having 350 kilowatts, that's not too crazy. But Lucid has a 118 kilowatt hour battery pack. Getting a battery pack that small to charge it over 350 kilowatts, that's amazing. That's really impressive. And they've definitely got a lot of cool technology and designs that some people like. I'm not the biggest fan, but I'm a biased Tesla fanboy, so write me off, I guess. But they've come up with some really impressive technology with some great performance, great acceleration, great range, and I am the kind of guy that cares about efficiency, so I'm a little bit saddened by this. But the truth is, the best thing they have going for them at this point is their high range, but their highest range vehicles are just too dang expensive for anybody to consider. It's not that I think that no one wants 500 mile range EVs, it's just that no one's willing to pay $140,000, $150,000, $160,000 for a 500 mile range EV, and Lucid was already struggling with profitability on their high-priced vehicles. So now that it's probably becoming quite obvious that everybody interested in buying a Lucid is rightfully pretty much just trying to buy the Air Touring or the Air Pure, because 400 miles of range is plenty, and there's not really that many differences between the Air Touring and the Grand Touring besides the extreme price gap, and I guess one goes 500, one goes 400. I think what a lot of people are likely figuring out, though, who are interested in following the high-end EV market, is that range with an EV is simply one part of the equation. The other part that impacts your enjoyability of road tripping with an EV is the charge network, and I do think that's probably one of the biggest issues Lucid is going to have as they continue to try to make vehicles that people actually want to buy, and the fact that the reservations are dropping in number faster than their vehicles are delivering means that, again, there's definitely a demand problem here. But if you're buying a $110,000 or $140,000 EV, but you have to charge it at the Walmart with the Electrify America station, which some of those stalls are working, some of them aren't. Sometimes the app is accurate in displaying how many stalls are active, and sometimes it isn't. And sometimes you could drive up in your $150,000 Lucid and be like, yeah, I got a full steering wheel. I'm better than Tesla. I've got amazing efficiency. I've got the best range of any EV on the market. And then you pull up to the station and you're waiting behind the Chevy Bolt, who doesn't know anything about the peak charge speed of the Chevy Bolt. So he's sitting at 50 kilowatts comfortably in his car, charging at the hyper fast stall, which could be charging your Lucid at 350 kilowatts, but nah, you're gonna have to wait in line with everybody else because you're sharing the same charging network as the Nissan Leaf and the Chevy Bolt. And I hope Electrify America can improve in the reliability, but time and time again, these issues and reliability problems just keep coming up on every channel I watch that covers it, and that is certainly going to put a big dent into that peak charge speed that the Lucid is offering. And if you gotta wait in line or the charger's not charging as fast as it's supposed to, doesn't ultimately save you that much trip time if your range is so much further than everybody else. So to me, Lucid is a great example of how desirability is not the limiting factor with EV adoption, because I do believe Lucid has made a very desirable product. In fact, I think there's a lot of people out there that if you showed them a long-range Model S and a Lucid Air, I bet most of them would pick the Lucid Air. It would have the longer range, it would have a more traditional steering wheel, it would have a massaging seats and a powered frunk, but once you start looking at the numbers and realizing one has supercharging access and one doesn't, and one of these is going to have a much bigger emphasis on software updates and software improvements over time, that's why there's still a wait time on the long-range Model S, despite it costing more than the cheapest Lucid Air. So the product itself is not necessarily the only part of the equation. It often comes down to the charging network and the software that supports the product that ultimately helps someone dictate what vehicle makes sense for them. And I know Lucid had a funding round lately, so that should keep them afloat for a little bit longer during these times of struggling to find buyers for their higher end vehicles, but a lot of that fundraising was made just by selling their own stock. So essentially another form of liquidation, and I'm grateful that aside from that, they were able to raise like $500 million in funding. I really wish some of that funding could just go to Aptera to get their production started, because having hyper efficient vehicles that are affordable so that people that actually care about efficiency can buy these high range EVs, that would be really cool and exciting for me. But I think there's not too much overlap between people who care about efficiency that are also willing to spend $140,000 on their car. Typically, people that are interested in efficiency tend to care more about the affordability, because if your vehicle is efficient, it doesn't cost as much upfront or to operate. So not too much overlap in the luxury EV space and the efficiency space. And Lucid basically hasn't announced any plans to start building out like their own charger network. They seem to think that Electrify America is good enough, and I don't think it is. So what do you guys think Lucid should do about this? If not enough people are buying the Grand Touring, and even with price cuts, they still can't move that much inventory on these vehicles, then do you think they should scrap their high range options? How can they start turning a profit in this business unless they make vehicles that people are actually wanting to drive? All your thoughts and opinions, feel free to let me know down in the comments below. And thank you to everyone on Patreon supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.